Hello, I hope everybody's doing well. My name's Trace Perot. This is my channel called 20 at 70. I called it that because I feel like I'm 20 and I'm going to be 70 in 5 months. Primarily a result of my lifestyle, which is a lifestyle based around 80-10-10, which is low-fat raw vegan. Um, this is video number 10. It's actually part 1 or A, 10A, whatever. The date today is 1/20, 1/20/22. Just briefly, my experience has been 31 years plant-based. 30 of those years were have been as a raw vegan. The first 15 were high-fat raw vegan, better known as gourmet raw vegan. And then the last 15 years I've been strictly 80-10-10, low-fat raw vegan, aka fruitarian, but I call it a tree-based diet because I like the connotations of that. So I call it a tree-based diet. Anyways, I'm going to recap, first of all, a little bit about the last video, number 9. I cited a quote from who I thought was Bernard Jensen. And actually, it wasn't Bernard Jensen. It was Norman Walker, who was a famous raw foodist and juicer. And he lived to be 99 years old. And so I just wanted to make that correction because I said it was Bernard Jensen and had lived to be 110, and I don't think he did. I looked him up, and then I discovered that I was actually talking about Norman Walker. And the quote was that I cited was 95% of all disease is due to what you eat. So I wanted to set the record straight on that. Next, I want to touch a little bit more on my story, especially about the part having to do with parasites. As I cited in video number 9, after about 5, 6, 7 years of being a raw vegan, high-fat raw vegan, not the healthiest diet in the world, I passed a foot-long roundworm. So at that time, I did a bunch of research on roundworms and found out what they were all about. And shockingly, I found some very, very wild stuff out about roundworms. The most shocking was that roundworms can produce, I think the figure was like up to 10,000 offspring a day, okay? So they're constantly producing other roundworms, larvae or whatever, in your body. And those roundworms, those progeny of the roundworm, make their way up through your stomach, into your esophagus, and actually up into your mouth, into your saliva. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, that means that let's get down and dirty. If you kiss somebody who's got roundworms, you're going to get them. Okay. If you've created the environment in your digestive tract that will host a parasite like a roundworm, you're going to get them. I remember very distinctly reading that you can actually get roundworm larvae under your fingernails from handling a doorknob that somebody with roundworms has, used, right? So, I found this pretty shocking, right? So not only is it internally in your intestines and your esophagus and your saliva, it can be transferred, okay? So, where does that leave us? Are we all going to be victims of parasites? Well, I don't believe that's the case. I firmly believe that I got rid of my parasites, and part of that process was becoming a low-fat raw vegan, which is a much less desirable hosting environment for parasites. I don't have any of the symptoms of parasitic infection. I haven't for many years. Just a note about that. I want to say that you know, if you're a meat eater, you've got parasites. Okay, I can't prove that, but from what I've seen, what I've experienced, I think that's a pretty accurate statement. Okay, I don't care how much you cook meat. You're at some point you're going to get some you're going to get some raw meat in there where the parasites are still alive. I just think that's the case. Once again, I don't have any proof of that. But I can also add to that that one of the major symptoms of a parasitic infection is snoring. Okay? And yes, I did snore when I had this parasitic infection, you know, like the first 5, 6, 7 years of being a raw vegan. So, you know, after I learned these things, I started noticing, you know, it's always great to kind of look at people and see, you know, how they figure in the scheme of diet and health and whatnot. And so I started noticing, you know, most meat eaters over a certain age, we'll say 30, the age of 30, these days it's much younger, have developed some form of pot belly involving fat, okay? I firmly believe that it's not only fat that's causing that pot belly, it's also parasites, okay? And so I've pretty much come to the conclusion if somebody does carry around a lot of extra weight in their gut area and they eat meat, they're definitely infected with parasites. There's several different types of parasites, but in my case it was a roundworm, and that sucker was big. He was a foot long, you know, I don't know, a 1/4 inch in diameter. And so, you know, I think it's a good thing that I discovered that, because it woke me up to that whole thing about parasites. So I also wanted to touch upon that whole idea from the emotional video, the video second part of 10, which I think is being uploaded right now. Hopefully it will make it. And that was the reference to the Michael Brown's The Presence Process. And I just wanted to say, one of the things about integrating your emotions through something like the presence process is that, and Michael Brown states that you know, one of the results is that basically, after you go through the presence process, you have a natural inclination to take care of yourself better, to maybe eat organic food, maybe cut down on the animal products or eliminate them altogether, and eat more fresh fruits and vegetables. So there's actually an instinctive ability for human beings to go towards those things, right? And I think what the presence process does is it strips away the layers of emotional association that we acquire through years of socialization from the day we're born to be eating meat and animal products and processed food and all this kind of stuff, okay? So in order to actually handle that, you know, our original instincts, our natural instincts, are covered up, I believe, by layers of emotion. And those layers of emotion are closely tied to this corrupt diet of animal products and processed food. So when you do something like the presence process and you're integrating these emotions that are partly due to this, you know, being off your game from the day you're born, right, in terms of what you're eating, those emotions start to strip away and your natural instincts start to come out, okay? You will start to abandon addictive things like alcohol and drugs and whatnot. And I think these are all natural instincts, okay, that are just there beneath those layers of emotion. And I do think that the presence process is one of the most effective ways to get rid of that, to get rid of those emotional layers, to integrate them. Michael Brown uses a lot of word play in his process, and the whole idea of integrating emotions is it brings you into greatness. Okay, so he's got a lot of that kind of thing going on in the presence process, where you're using words to literal meaning of words. So, anyways, I wanted to make that point about the presence process and integrating emotions as it related to getting into raw food and perhaps you know, having to confront those emotions and get past them. So now I just want to discuss what I learned about food this week. I'm going to try to do that every week. And what I learned about food this week, I walked into a health food store last week. The health food store I normally go to buy nuts. And on the bins, all of a sudden, somebody had put up a sign that said, you know, they're organic nuts, right? Organic cashew, or organic almonds, organic walnuts, organic Brazil nuts. And they had put a sign up that said pasteurized organic nuts. Okay, so I looked at that and I went, that was not there last week, right? So this is something new. So I thought, you know, I have a negative impression of anything that's pasteurized. It reminds me of pasteurized milk, right? So I looked it up and I checked it out, and apparently there are two ways to pasteurize nuts. One is to steam them in a process that heats them up to approximately 165 degrees for 60 seconds. One of the theories behind that, in terms of whether or not those nuts are still raw, is that that's not long enough to actually penetrate into the nut. It gets a certain distance into the skin of the nut, but doesn't actually penetrate it, so the nuts are still raw, by and large. And then the other process is using something called PPO, which I'm going to read this, propylene oxide gas. Okay, this is the other way to homogenize nuts, and my guess is that a lot of the nuts that are not organic are being homogenized with this PPO stuff. Now, PPO is a highly toxic substance, okay, and it was actually used as racing fuel, okay, car racing fuel, until it was determined to be unsafe, and then it was discontinued as an automobile racing fuel. So I don't know about you, but I sure don't want to be eating something that was, you know, treated with automobile racing fuel. Okay, so I just wanted to be clear about that. And the fact is that small producers of nuts, organic nuts, or even inorganic nuts, are not required by law, even in the state of California, to homogenize their nuts, or I'm sorry, pasteurize their nuts, which was originally brought up because of some kind of E. coli scare. So if you buy from a smaller farmer, I don't know what the limitation is, but you know, they primarily targeted, with that law, they targeted the big nut producers in the Central Valley of California. But if you're a small farmer, you're not required to do that, all right? And I have purchased nuts at a farmer's market from somebody who just grew them on their property. You know, they still had the branches and the leaves on them, and they just tasted out of this world. I mean, they were incredible, right? And these people were not homogenizing or pasteurizing these nuts. So I just wanted to make that point. So, you know, obviously the optimal way to handle that is to go toward, you know, the smaller farmers and buy their nuts and ask them, are you pasteurizing them, and blah, 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 you know. That way you can get around it. So the next section of this video, and I'm going to try to maintain this progression in each video, is what I call the diet squeeze, okay? And this relates to anybody who's questioning their diet, who's trying to improve their diet, make it more optimal, starting with SAD people, the standard American diet, you know, meat 2 or 3 times a day, and all the other stuff that standard American diets are involved in. Um, the diet squeeze, I call it, is a way to get out of that, to get into a more optimal species-specific diet that's going to give you all the benefits that I certainly am receiving, and many other people who are low-fat raw vegans are testing to. So in previous videos, I started, I personally think the best way to do it is to start when you get up in the morning, okay? It's a new day, it's a new dawn, you want to take on something new, do it when you got that energy, when you had a good night's sleep, So I recommended in the previous video that you start with citrus. The reason for that is it's kind of a natural eliminator. And you're on your elimination cycle from 3 a.m. to 12 noon. So, you get up in the morning, eat some citrus, you're going to go to the bathroom, right? Any kind of citrus is going to do that. Juiced citrus, juiced orange juice is great. Anyway, so you can hear about that in the previous video. And then I recommended the next thing you go after is sweet fruit, okay? So for me, that means making a smoothie. So I would recommend having some bananas on hand. Do your citrus. Wait, 20 minutes to a half an hour for the magic of citrus to work, and then go after the sweet fruit. With the high calorie density, the high density sweet fruit. Okay. Primarily bananas. That's the most readily available high-density sweet fruit on the planet. You can get them anywhere. You can get them organically anywhere. So bananas, are sweet fruit of choice. So there are many other high-density sweet fruits, papayas and durian. Dates are extremely dense and high-calorie. Raisins, when you soak them, are very digestible and very dense. So there are a lot of other high-density sweet fruits. In the tropical environment, you have ackee, which is a high-density sweet fruit. You've got champadak. You have, what's the name of that? Jackfruit. You've got jackfruit. So you have a lot of high-density sweet fruit, especially in the tropical environment. Now, along with that sweet fruit, I highly recommend having greens. So in my smoothie, I always put greens. I either put cucumbers, I put lettuce, or I put celery is a great one. Spinach, kale is another great one. So I always mix that in with my banana smoothie in the morning. If I'm doing a banana smoothie, I might be doing a jackfruit smoothie for that matter, but I've always got the greens there. My impression is that the greens help to slow down the sugars, essentially, as you absorb them, So I think that's what happens. I definitely feel difference when I eat between just eating sweet fruit and eating sweet fruit with greens. So I always try to eat them with greens. Sometimes the greens are not available, so I eat the sweet fruit, and it does the job. So that's where you want to go after the citrus. Okay, you put away the bacon and eggs, or you put away the oatmeal with blueberries if you're a vegan, a cooked vegan, or you put away if you're a high-fat raw vegan, you put away the nuts and seeds and apples and stuff, and you're squeezing out your diet from the top. You're wringing it out. Okay, so you got citrus, then you go to the sweet fruit with the greens, right? And the trick there is that you're gonna feel full after that smoothie. And I'm talking 8 to 10 bananas, a big handful of greens in there. And I would also keep that smoothie simple. Really, I rarely ever put more than 3 ingredients in a smoothie. I see people on the internet and they're packing powders and potions and this, that, and the other thing, and seeds, and they're putting all this stuff into their smoothie, right? Well, that's just confusing to your body. Number one, you should never mix fat with sweet fruit, high density sweet fruit. It's a very bad combination. And, but the main point is that you're just confusing your digestive system. And most of those powders and things, you don't need them, all right? You know, superfood, cacao powder or whatever, it's a marketing ploy, okay? I would personally recommend that everybody just stay away from superfoods, There's really nothing super about superfoods. They may have some nutritional value, but if they're dried out and all this kind of stuff, I mean, if you can eat goji berries, fresh, ripe, organic goji berries, go for it. But if you have to eat goji berry powder and put it in your smoothie, forget it. It's not worth the cost. It's not worth the supposed benefits that you get from it. And all it does is make the superfood salesman rich. Okay, I'd rather give my money to a nice farmer or a person down at the farmer's market than I would to some slick marketer who's, I won't mention any names, of course, but who's trying to sell you superfoods and supplements. Okay, so anyway, so that's really, that's the second progression: citrus, high density sweet fruit with greens, and then you come to, the third aspect of squeezing out. If you plan on having lunch, whatever that is, if it's steak and potatoes or if it's a salad, hopefully it's a salad or, whatever, depending on your diet level. You want to wait 3 hours, at least 3 hours, 4 hours, it's actually better, before you have any concentrated food, before you eat any fat, before you eat any grains, before you eat any animal products. You got to wait 3 to 4 hours. Now, there is a caveat to that, and I rely on this a lot because I'm a big snacker. I'm eating all day long, all right? I love to eat, and so I've got a lot of snack things going on. And the fact is if you're planning on eating that lunch at 12 noon and you need to wait 4 hours after you had your first smoothie, okay, eventually you won't, because you won't be eating lunch at 12 noon. You'll be having 2 or 3 smoothies in the day, and you'll be waiting till 2 or 3 p.m. to cut that off. But if you just want to hit the noon benchmark, okay, which is a major benchmark in your journey toward a healthier diet, fruit till noon, you can eat all the subacid fruit you want between the time you finish that high density sweet fruit smoothie or fruit salad. You can eat all the subacid fruit you want right up until noon before you eat your lunch. Okay, so subacid fruit, once again, subacid fruit is a little bit sweet and a little bit tangy, right? So, like if you take an oranges are not necessarily sweet, right? They're more tangy and borderline sour, okay? Subacid fruit brings the sweet element in, okay? So it's sweet, but it's at the same time it's tangy. So if you think of a nectarine, yeah, a peach, and my favorite and most available all year round, an apple, okay? So if I want to cut myself off from the sweet fruit and let it digest, I'll just go to eating apples, right? Or I'll go to eating peaches or nectarines if they're available. And all the other subacid fruit, like even, actually grapes and berries are considered to be acid fruit, but I don't find them too abrasive in terms of combining them with high density sweet fruit. But there are lots of subacid fruits out there that you can snack on after you've cut off your high density sweet fruit. Okay, so that's it. That's number 3. I'm not going to go any further with that one. I don't want people to get overwhelmed. So now we're at the third level. We've done the citrus, we've done the sweet fruit with the greens, and then we've gotten into eating the subacid fruit. So that'll be it for today for the diet squeeze. This video, I'm just gonna concentrate on two things. I have to check the time here because I'm due to jump on my bike and go off to the bus stop and take the bus to Kona. So I'll have to, actually it's 11:30, so I need to leave right now. So I will shorten this off right now and continue this video after I get to Kona. I'm continuing a video I had to cut short because I had to go off to Kona. I'm located on the big island of Hawaii in the Puna district, but I work on the weekends, Friday through Sunday, over in Kona. So I had to leave. So now it's 4 days later, it's Tuesday, so I'm continuing the video. So I did my recap of the previous video, which was number 9, my corrections from that video. I did my diet squeeze, what I call my diet squeeze, squeezing the crap out of your diet. And now I'm going to get down to the subject matter of what this video was intended to be about. It's going to be about two things. First of all, it's going to be briefly about salt. Secondly, it's going to be a discussion of longevity and the aging process as it relates to diet. So, let's start with salt. Most of the presenters, the chefs, the raw food chefs, vegan chefs, even 80-10-10 chefs on YouTube, places where you go to get recipes like, Fully Raw Crostina and Jillian Berry and all these other people. They're making fantastic dishes, and I highly recommend you go to their YouTube channels if you need a recipe for a nice raw vegan low-fat meal. Check them out. I do that frequently when I want to make lasagna or pasta or tahini or falafels or what have you. I'll check their sites out and I'll get recipes from them. There's only one thing I have to complain about most of these presenters is that they use salt. And personally, I think this is not a good thing. And that's based on the idea that salt as an inorganic mineral, meaning that it's not processed by plants, okay, is not absorbable by the human body. Okay. And it's an addictive substance. So when they're making, some pasta dish or something, they're making a sauce, a pasta, tomato sauce or whatever, and they're telling you to put pink Himalayan salt. Okay, well, really, it doesn't matter if it's pink, purple, green, red, orange, okay? It's salt. It's an inorganic mineral. It's not intended or possible to absorb it by the human body, okay? The other aspect, and if you want to substitute, a very simple substitute is just use celery, okay? When I make a hot sauce with, some nice sun-dried tomatoes and peppers and, chili powder and stuff like this, great tasting hot sauce, I never use salt. And I just chop up some celery and put it in the mix, and it gives you a salty flavor. So, I recommend that. If you want to really get a salty flavor, just take some celery, chop it up, and dehydrate it for a few hours, and it'll be very salty, and you can put it in your dishes and use that. Salt is something that will cause you to retain water. And I assume that's why, they recommend that you take salt if you're a long-distance runner or whatever, salt tablets, because it makes you retain water, okay? My experience has been is that salt just has an immediate dehydrating effect on your body. You can get around that. It can't be healthy for you. And the major thing about salt is that since, the human being can only actually taste salt, sweet, bitter, and sour, okay? Apparently those are the 4 things that humans can taste. Salt has been, as sugar has been, sweetness, salt has been utilized by the food company, the corporate food world, to make food addictive. Okay. So, as I said in a previous video, I supervise an emergency shelter for homeless people, and they do serve them 3 meals a day under a federal grant. And these meals are standard American diets. They always contain meat. And so I'm dealing with this food. I'm distributing it to homeless people at the shelter. So I encounter it when I'm at work 3 times a day, right? And I will tell you right now that the predominant smell of that food is salt. Okay, if you open one of these packages up, it's like a 5-course meal. I mean, it is salty. There's just an aroma of salt coming out of it. And it's highly addictive. Just instantaneously, my whole being will go, I want to eat that, right? I mean, it's that powerful, okay? It's so powerful that just the smell alone will, the thought will cross my mind that I just want to devour that. Of course I don't. I don't touch it, period. I know the consequences. And really, you want to ask yourself whenever you're confronted with any kind of food that's good, and believe me, that food tastes good, pepperoni pizza and all that kind of stuff, and fried chicken and, all that stuff, that I haven't had for 30 years. It's good. It tastes great, okay? But what you have to ask yourself is, it's good, but is it good for you, okay? Hopefully you ask yourself that before you indulge in some kind of obsessive eating of that sort of food. I don't miss it at all, I'll tell you that right out. But anyways, I just wanted to make that point about salt. If you're including it in a raw food diet, okay, and you're having any kind of problem with yo-yoing, going from raw food back to cooked food, chances are it's that salt that you're using in your raw food is just keeping that flavor, in the forefront of your experience. So when you go back to cooked food, the craving may be originating from that salt. Okay, you're still using salt in your food. You're still tasting it. It's a highly potent flavor. It's much more potent than celery. So it stands to reason that since that's up front in these dishes that you might be making with salt, that will have an effect on your craving for, cooked food. So anyways, that's that. Now, I want to move on to this idea of longevity. And the thought occurred to me over the weekend, because I was thinking about what I was going to do my next video on. The thought occurred to me that really, I don't really have the experience of getting old, okay? The experience that, everybody has a perception of what it's like to be old, right? And it's a fairly stereotypic perception, right? You're slower, you're maybe bent over, you got aches and pains, you don't have a lot of energy, you go to the doctor a lot, these are all, you look a certain way, you have wrinkles, you got gray hair, all this kind of stuff, I really don't have that experience of getting old, that experience of aging, I'm not familiar with it. I couldn't tell you what it means to be getting old. Yes, you have a lot more experience, you have a lot more memories. You may have had, 2 or 3 careers in your life by the time you're my age, right? But these things in my mind do not constitute getting old, all right? So this is what you have to look forward to if you're on a low-fat, raw vegan diet for an extensive period of time. You're basically not going to experience age, okay? And really, I don't have any reference, right? Because there's no limitations on me right now in terms of how I feel, what I do, my energy level, my health level. all are equal to or better than I was when I was 20 years old. Uh, you know, um, so this is a very interesting concept to me, right? This is a revolutionary kind of look at what happens to you as you get older. As you acquire more years of experience, I should say, right? Okay, so anyways, I wanted to read this quote from Romeo and Juliet. I acted in Romeo and Juliet with the Hilo community players this summer, and there's a great line in there where Shakespeare could be talking about, the difference between a carnivore diet and a vegan diet, and it's when Juliet is in her chamber and she previously has sent out her maid to find Romeo in the town square and let him know that she wanted to have a liaison with him. And she's, of course, very nervous, and her nurse has been gone for a long time, and she's starting to get antsy. And she says, in her dialogue, she says, "But old folks, many feign as if they were dead, unwieldy, slow, and pale as lead." Okay, so that really describes your standard American diet old person, somebody over the age of 65. Okay, so you can't show me a low fat raw vegan that fits this description. But most people over the age of 65 who are eating a standard American diet do definitely fit that description, no doubt about it. Just think of your grandparents. So, there is, I have witnessed presenters on the internet talk about, life extension due to being a vegan or being a vegetarian or whatever, and sort of the way it plays out. I don't remember exactly, but the way it plays out is that if you're a vegetarian, like a lacto-ovo vegetarian, you're automatically adding like 6 years to your life. Okay, if you're a vegetarian with no animal products, you're adding like 8 years to your life. If you're a vegan, a cooked vegan, you're adding like 10 to 12 years to your life. Okay, if you're a raw vegan, well, they don't have really much evidence about that, but you have to assume you're adding like 15 years to your life, right? So I feel very safe in saying that if you're a low-fat raw vegan, 80% fruit in your diet, no animal products, you're looking at a minimum of 20 years added to your life, okay? And I'm not talking about 20 years of taking prescription medicine and walking around with a cane and being old and being, bent over. I'm talking about 20 years of additional living in your life where you feel like you're 20 years old, okay? So, so my mom died at 93, right? So 20 plus 93 is what, 113, right? So, that's what I'm looking at, and that's a minimum, all right? I'm actually shooting for 140, okay? I've seen records, evidence of people on, diets in some faraway place where everybody lives to be over 100, and they've lived to be 120 years old. And they're eating cooked grains, and they're not eating a lot of fruit and stuff like this, So I think 140 is pretty reasonable. But I can say flat out that if you're a low-fat raw vegan, the information, what 80-10-10 is offering to you, what a fruitarian, what a tree-based diet is offering to you, is 20 years additional of your lifespan. High energy, healthy, okay, feeling like you're 20. Okay, so, the question is that worth it? All right, if you're a cooked vegetarian, or if you're a standard American diet person and you're eating the standard, the same old stuff, is it worth it for you to go to the trouble to investigate this lifestyle if it's almost guaranteed going to add 20 years to your life that are high energy and very healthy and very much enhanced in terms of your well-being. If you're an SAD, you may already be in the mode that you're getting old and slow and pale as lead and acting like you're dead, right? So, you know, I'm saying to you, you know, here it is on a silver platter, right? 20 years, high energy, very high level of health. You know, but for me, I'm looking at beyond that. And we don't know because we don't have, you know, people who have been low-fat, raw, vegan, organic, right, for, you know, 40 or 50 years. I mean, they just aren't around. I think Doug Graham's been doing it for 40 years. He discovered it 40 years ago. So we're not really sure where that's going, you know. But I do know this, you know, as per the experiments that they have made on cells, that if you provide them with the proper nutrients and keep them, you know, in a non-toxic environment, they will live indefinitely. Okay, so as much as I can, I follow that. You know, yeah, that's what I'm looking at, and that's the main thing I wanted to cover in this video. What else can we say about longevity? You know, that's the main thing. You know, you have to ask yourself, am I going to go to a little trouble and change my bad habits and change the way I eat and risk being, you know, ostracized by my immediate friends and family, you know, at least temporarily until they see how great you're looking and feeling and doing, and then they're going to ask you how you got there, right? Is it worth the trouble, right? Well, you know, what kind of a value can you put on 20 years of a high level of existence in addition to what your average, you know, what your lifespan is going to be? You can't put a place of value on that. That's worth more than all the money in the world, right? And I will say right now that if you put $1 billion right here on my yoga mat in front of me and said, you can have this money if you eat a standard American diet for the rest of your life, I would say, you know, keep your money, right? That is how valuable this lifestyle is to me. And that brings up another point. As I learned from reading Tony Robbins' books, you know, he's a, what do you call him? You know, a life coach type guy. That a lot of this is about value systems. So you have to consciously choose your values. So some people value health. Other people don't value health. They value success over health, right? So they will sacrifice their health to be successful. And there's an adage in the plant-based world about how most people destroy their health building their wealth, all right? And then when they retire, they spend their wealth trying to get their health back, okay? So that's a clear-cut case of somebody who values, you know, wealth and success over their health. But my question to you is, if you are one of those people, what the heck does all that wealth and success mean if you get to be 50 or 60 and you've made it, but your health sucks, right? And you have to constantly fight and go to doctors and do this, that, and the other thing just to stay alive, right? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to value success over health. Maybe if you valued them both equally, that would be great, you know. So that's very, you know, that's something that we all should be doing. We all should be, you know, recognizing consciously what we value, which interestingly enough really aligns with your astrological signs, and I'll get into that in the sequel to this video when I talk about astrology. But like, you know, just as an example, in my case, Tauruses are ruled by Venus. Venus is the planet of beauty and pleasure. So of high value in my life is beauty, and I try to express that through my art and my music. That's, um, it's really a dominant value in my system, or in my astrological makeup, and each sign has a different sort of prominent value according to the planets that rule them. So, anyways, that in a nutshell is what I wanted to talk about on this video, was this whole thing about salt, and also this whole thing about longevity. So it's up to you to make that decision, to place a value on one thing or another, to decide whether or not you're going to go to the trouble and get the proper information to eat a species-specific diet, the diet that you are made to eat, that you have evolved to eat, and as a result, get the consequences, or the effects, these amazing effects and benefits from. Anyways, that's the end of this video, and my next video is going to be a yoga astrology sequence, so stay tuned for that.